gas chamber, yeah.
There's no picture.
Sorry?
Picture.
There's no picture. Good evening. Yes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. Fire evacuation procedures for the evening meetings. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the ring. Meetings members, please note that this meeting is being webcast. Been notified of the Robinson is now being substituted by sent her apologies. Minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of March, and we go straight into item. Is the objector here?
No. Questions after. Are we going to get hearing any submissions from anybody else?
No.
No? So we're ready to vote unless we ask questions. Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. I don't necessarily object to reconfirming the decision that we made last time, but having looked at it again and having had a couple of people talk to me about it, I do now notice that the increase is loaded towards the shorter journeys, and I can think of reasons for that. I can also think of reasons that it might cause me a little bit of, I won't say concern, but would raise questions in my mind in as to whether it would change the behaviour of customers or drivers or anything else. So I wondered if I could ask the officers if they could just briefly talk through the rationale of loading the pound at the short end, and also the fact that we've done a flat pound increase across all three different tariffs as well, and just why we did it that way instead of just a 10% increase across the whole tariff range. That would be my first question. And then I would like to make a proposal about this. If we're going to vote to reapprove this, I would like to make a proposal once I've heard from the officers, if I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donoghue. If you want to turn your mic off, that would be great. Thank you. The pound on the drop, or the flag, as it's known, was the request from the trade. As you're correct, it does load up, if you like, the shorter journeys. I don't think it would take you long if you were stood on the rank to realise that an awful lot of the journeys that the drivers make are quite short. And it's not uncommon for the drivers to be away from the rank for literally 5 or 10 minutes at a time before they're back on the rank. So on that basis, because the shorter journeys are the ones that the drivers make, it was agreed that we would go down that route rather than looking to put a 10% rate across the entire, as you suggested, across the entire tariff. Because that will give the best return, if you like, for the drivers. Those people who do undertake a short journey, the cost is relatively minimal anyway. Whereas if you have a longer journey, proportionately, whilst that's much better for the driver, all drivers prefer a longer journey with a greater return on the tariff. But those aren't the ones that the drivers frequently make. It's usually just hops backwards and forwards from the station across to a local hotel or a gym or something like that. So the pound was felt to be also very quick to bring in on the meter as well. And the meter setting can be very complex. There's several different meters in use by the rank. We have 2 meter setters, and all the drivers will need to have all the meters reset if they're going to adopt the new tariff. The other issue to point out here is that this is a maximum tariff, as all tariffs are. So drivers do not have to accept this increase if they do not wish to have it. You smile, but I've been licensing taxis for well over a decade or so now, and I have known it that drivers do not look to increase to the maximum available tariff because they feel that there may be a competitive advantage for them. So yeah, there's a variety of reasons for this. As you'll see in the paper, we are also looking at reviewing this tariff in 6 to 12 months' time, depending on what the economic situation then is. Drivers have suffered a very short lead-in time to significant increases in their primary costs, which is obviously the diesel into their vehicles. And as such, we felt it was something that we would like to progress as swiftly as possible. That obviously hasn't happened because we've had an objection to the tariff, and we were hoping that this work would have been undertaken and in place by now. But that isn't the way things are. So yeah, we will be looking back at the tariff as a whole in a few months' time. But this way seems to be the fairest way to have the least impact on most travellers, whilst giving the drivers some relief as to their primary costs.
Chair. I do think that in some ways, to me, what justifies the flat rate pound and the simple approach and the quick simple approach is that this in some ways is a little bit of an emergency increase. It's almost an interim solution. And I would like to propose formally that rather than say 6 to 12 months, we do say 6 months, so that we absolutely do come back in 6 months' time and look at this again, and the officers, given your, will have something ready for the committee to consider in 6 months' time rather than 12 months' time. So I would like to propose that we just tighten up that timescale a little bit to 6 months.
I thought we agreed that at the last meeting, so it's sort of butt in.
We've already done that, have we? It's still in the paper at 6 to 12 months.
I think the paper was written because obviously the staffing here, but I mean, if you really want to tighten it down to 6 months, I'm sure that could be. What's the okay?
The reason that there was a slight redrafting, and I put my hand up to that. I'm always happy to be accountable for my actions. The reason that we did that was between the last committee meeting and this committee meeting, we've lost a member of staff, and I've got another member of staff who's going off on maternity leave. And whilst I am very sympathetic to the drivers, and I think there's just about most of the faces up there know who I am, and that I'm prepared to go and speak to them on the rank. I would love to be able to say 6 months, but I'm just aware that we might not hit the 6 months, and I'd rather that I'm certainly not planning on going to the full 12 months. I just gave us a little bit more space because I'd rather manage the expectations a bit better rather than set a deadline. We're fortunate in the position that we're having an increase in the number of drivers and vehicles coming back onto our books. Not necessarily in the Hackney trade, but certainly across the private hire. So the team are very busy at the moment dealing with other licensing matters. So it was just a matter of really resetting the expectations whilst being fair to the drivers. But if councillors wish it to be 6 months, then we can make it 6 months, but that will put the team under some pressure.
I'm sorry, but I mean, my recollections are we agreed 6 months at the last meeting, and I mean, what's the point of coming into a meeting if we don't abide by what we've agreed? And unless someone's going to correct me, I'm sure we agreed 6 months at the last meeting. I seem to see Councillor Godson's nodding.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the first point I'd make is, yes, we did specifically say come back in 6 months. The only comment I'd make here is that we made, on March the 28th, we made the decision to accept the tariffs which were proposed at that time. I believe I'm right in saying that those tariffs were acceptable to the drivers at that time. It's quite true to say that if we hadn't had these two objections, those tariffs would have been implemented on April the 18th. And now it's going further and further back. For me, I consider that the most equitable solution is to accept the decision that we made on March the 28th, with the proviso that yes, they are reviewed in 6 months and not in 6 to 12 months. And that will give the drivers the opportunity between that time and now that we all are aware there are going to be a massive increase in all sorts of costs, and that will give the drivers an opportunity in 6 months to review the effect of this proposal and to offer a response to us about to what degree they think it should be changed. Thank you.
Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Councillor Dodson. In which case, what I would propose then is, in recognition of the extra work that's been put on you through this little process, that the 6 months should be from today. It would give you a little bit of extra time to have something ready to review in 6 months' time. So that is what I would propose in line with what you said.
Are you moving that recommendation?
I am.
Seconded? Got two of it. Right. Councillor Dawson seconded. So we're taking it out for 12 months. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to poke out the eye. All those in favour, please show. Agreed? Thank you very much. And that's for both recommendations on the form here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all very much for coming out. Those who are up for election tomorrow, I wish you all the best. Hope to see you on the other side.